on screen, a lot more people navigate toward those because they're visual. There's something they can see, and in under 2 hours, they're done. But when you go into a book, of course, as you know, as a reader, there is so much more going on that you don't see up on the screen, a lot more depth, right? That you get, for instance, just the one major factor that's different is you dive into the characters' heads, and you certainly don't really get that on the big screen. So the last thing I want to share is that I do have 3 screenplays. And for those of you who do not know, my very first story, excuse my cat, my very first story, my first full-length novel, it was originally entitled Intent and is now known as book 2 in my Small Town Secret series as Intent Deadly Secrets. That particular book at the time, Intent, was also my first feature-length screenplay that I completed for my MFA in creative writing program through National University. And because I already had this template, and by the way, I had to do it in 1 month, 4 weeks. These classes that I took, it was an accelerated program, so some were 8 weeks, some were 4. This one was 4 weeks. And in 4 weeks, I had to put together something I've never done before, nothing anywhere like it. And based on my experience as a writer in poetry, songs, short stories, this was definitely a huge challenge for me because it took parts of the brain cells I've never used before. There's all this white space in scripts. There's just so many different things you can't put in. You can't plug in the actors or the characters' thoughts, right? Their feelings. You have to show it in a different way. It has to be known visually. So in 4 weeks, I wrote this script. Then my family and I took a road trip. We lived in California at the time, from California to Maryland, for my 20-year high school reunion, and this was back in 2013. In those 2 weeks, I put together the novel. I already had the template for the screenplay, and it took me 2 weeks. My husband was driving, so I had all day, every day, just and in 2 weeks, I had the full novel, the first draft of the full novel. So ever since then, I have created 2 more screenplays, one for Shrouded Memory, which is my standalone psychological thriller that deals with PTSD and trauma, the realities of those 2. And then the third one is the middle grade fantasy called The Gold. And that story is also super close to my heart as it deals with a lonely bullied girl. And so those 3, very vastly different from each other in genre, but all dealing with overcoming something and surviving something traumatic. Okay, so all those 3 I do have as scripts, and I would just love it if you could just pray for me or keep me in your mind as I try to get these made, or at least one of them, and bring them, to the world on a much more global scale than they are right now. There are so many relatable themes there for people. There's the major emotion of trauma and loss, fear, but also of hope and love and survival. And I would love, love, love to have those on a much available to the world on a much larger